Hey, thank you for joining me for another episode of Racking Up Rentals. This is episode number 209, which means you can find show notes at thoughtfulre.com/E209. Please take just a second to subscribe to this podcast or to the channel or plus or follow or whatever it looks like in your podcast app and platform. Make sure, of course, that you don't miss anything coming up, but also sends a nice message back to those podcast platforms that you are listening, makes them want to share it with everybody else. Thank you for doing that. And onward with today's episode. And today's episode is one of those that you've heard me say before. I just absolutely love these. They're my favorite types of episodes to do overall because I get the chance to showcase one of the awesome people that I get to work with on a coaching basis. And in this particular case study, I sat down with Pasha, who has coached with me a lot over the years. But this particular story is about him buying a package of 4 duplexes at the same time from a seller. So we talk about the negotiation, how it all came together, the challenges, how he overcame them, and ultimately how he succeeded. So let's queue up and go right into that case study interview right now. So, Pasha, you recently bought 4 duplexes at the same time, off market, by working face to face with a seller. So, in other words, like you bought something that nobody else even knew was, for sale. So, how do you what was the key to making that happen?
Oh boy. So I would say for me, there were a couple of things. The very first thing that I would say is the most important item is that my mindset is now different than where I used to be, like let's say 6 months ago. I'm more of to give you a little bit of context, I'm more of a technical, analytical type of person. Everything needs to go through a spreadsheet. Does it make sense? Yay, let's go with it or not. And I actually started developing understanding the importance of communication. And it was always a barrier for me because English is not my first language. So I always thought that could actually work against me. And I think fear of that was holding me back. But when I saw that, hey, no, I mean, it seems like I'm not, I mean, I'm communicating pretty well on some standards. And then taking notes on how to do this properly. Basically, hey, you want to sound like this, you want to be like this, you want to be in this position, you don't want to be in this position. So these are like the nuggets that if you put together, it kind of helps you. And that was the case with me. So that I kind of started understanding that, well, maybe the very first sentence that you want to talk to the seller is not how much you want for it. Maybe the very first thing that you want to talk to them is something completely outside of the transaction of a real estate, and basically just getting to know them and getting them to know you to some extent that you're comfortable with. But basically, I think understanding relationships and in my endeavors, specifically regarding real estate, was the most important one. And the next one is basically understanding how to run a marketing campaign, how it can fail. What are the 1,000 ways that a marketing campaign can fail? And I definitely tried some of them, but well, there were a lot of pitfalls that I already knew to not go there and not fall into them. For example, those, I would call them nasty yellow postcards that you will receive and everybody hates it. So it kind of helped me to define myself when I started my marketing campaign. And I assume something like that gave me like it allowed me to use the experience of people that actually have done this before. So I didn't have to spend like a lot of money and a lot of years of me trying to find it out, basically trying to see what is it that other people did that was successful to them. And now here's the thing, there's always a little bit of a adjustment area and a little bit of adjustment space based on your audience, based on where you do this. I'm pretty sure a marketing campaign in California might not be as similar one in Missouri, right? Yeah. But instead of learning everything on my own, I just had to learn 5% of it, because 95% of the whole thing was pretty much into very good details already given to me, which was basically from, as you know, is from your program. And I'm not just saying it just because I'm talking to you. It's I've I've scanned and screened a lot of different mentorship and programs before actually jumping on this one. And I'm so happy to do this. And it's just one of the greatest things that happened in my real estate life. So,
oh man, I'm so glad to hear that. I love hearing that. So when you think about the deal that you actually did, these 4 duplexes, and you've been closed now for a couple of weeks, so like if you've had like a little time to reflect and decompress and whatnot, how are you feeling about it? Like, do you feel like are you feel like you're glad with the deal that you closed on? Like, do you feel like you got a good deal out of this?
that's a very good question. The more it passes from that, I realize that this is such a great deal. It's like such a sweet, great deal. And the reason for that is because this was probably one of the biggest deals that I've ever done. It's like the size of it is like more than $1 million. My commitments and everything is obviously like to extend, because all other deals are like, okay, so what? Like the worst case scenario is that I've just ate up the cost. I'm not at a place of my life that I can just eat up like $1 million cost. So that automatically gave me like some anxiety and everything. But everything was good on the paper. I already built a good relationship. I already got a very, very deep discount on what I could have bought on market. And by doing the due diligence and everything was good. So I kind of trusted my instinct. I really appreciated like all of the support that you gave me, and nothing like out of the extra, like out of the normal thing. Like it wasn't like, yeah, just jump on it with like a blindfold. It was more of a like, look, you got this, and that. Like we've got appraisal, like the official appraisal coming back telling us that it worth like 25% more than what you're paying. Like you've got enough cushion, like you've got a good financial structure to support it. So the more that I look into it and the more that I'm working on the numbers, I realize that it's such a good decision. Although I use really conservative numbers, it still made sense. And actually, a couple of days ago, I started like advertising just because there was one of these units which was empty, and I asked the owner to make like I asked them to not rent that because I wanted to start renovation from that one. Then I realized I'm starting to renovating some part of it, not all of it. So some part of me was like, can I rent just one part of it? And as crazy as it sounds, I advertise it and like 15 people are just jumping on it. And we just signed a lease like a couple of days ago, which is more than all other units that are like fully rented. And it's because the rents haven't been gone up. And the owner was just good with it. Very retired type of like, yeah, I mean, it's cash flow. I don't care if it's a little bit more or less of type of situation. So now I'm looking into the scales of the financial part of it, and it absolutely makes sense. And I'm really, really happy because I believe it can be another push forward for me with the rest of my portfolio to get me closer to my bigger goals.
Yeah.
So
Gosh.
absolutely. Yeah.
And as I recall, the appraised values of these properties ended up coming in quite a bit more than what you were paying, right? Was it how many percent did you say it was? 20 or so?
It was about 20%, yes, because we bought almost 20%. We bought the property, to give you the exact number, we bought the property for $1.1 million. Then we got a little bit of a discount, $16,000 discount on it. I mean, we already negotiated down to 1.1, and then we did another like top of it discount, if you will, and then we did another like $4,000 or $5,000 on top of that one on closing costs. So we were trying to lower it down, but it came back to us for $1.3 million as appraised value. So
you instantly added about $200,000 to your net worth just by buying them in this particular way. And I think somebody from the outside would say like, well, why would this seller sell them to you for 200,000, 20% less than he might have been able to get had he listed them? And obviously there's some different costs and things with listing, but what is your answer? Like if you're in your local community and a new investor comes up to you and says, Pasha, how did you do that? Why would that person do it? What would you tell them?
There is a meme that is, I don't know how big of a geek. I'm a very, obviously I'm a very big nerd and I'm proud of it. There is a meme from Star Wars, which is Obi-Wan, which is like old, and it says, "Of course I know him. It's me." It's when the young Luke Skywalker asked like, "Hey, do you know Obi-Wan?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's me." It just reminded me of that because I was exactly in that situation. I was like, I mean, why the heck somebody would just sell something 20% lower than their value? Like it doesn't make sense at all. So um, when I started looking again into things from the relationship standpoint, um, and I was really protective of not doing it because I was like, these are all like nonsense. Like it's at the end of the day, it's all about numbers and that's it. When I started looking into this and when I started looking into other like successful people that are doing it, I realized that, well, I might be wrong. And the reality is, and it was shocking to me, but it is the reality is that maybe just 90%, maybe 85% of investors are really looking to get the best price. There are really considerable amount of people that they're not really, I mean, they want to sell, they want to get a good price for it, but if you tell them that, hey, it's going to be $1.1 million to Pasha or $150,000 to a random person, they actually gladly go with the lower one, which is, I mean, if you ask me from an investor perspective, it doesn't make sense to me. But a lot of people actually do like to go with the person that they feel more comfortable with. They want to go with the person that they feel they have a relationship with. So for example, in this very case, we've been in this, it was a lot of back and forth. I actually went back home in Iran, and when I came back, I brought him souvenirs. Like we were going back and forth. Even now, we're still in contact, and I'm going to show him how he can set up security cameras in his in one of his like father-in-law home or something.
Hmm.
It's really like like at some point we were like, yeah, we're friends. Like when his wife met me when we wanted to sign the contract, she was like, oh, so you are Pasha that my husband is talking about. And it was really interesting to me. Even there was a letter that the seller sent to all of the tenants, and he sent a copy of that to me because I also sent them a letter and I sent him the copy. Was, hey, like I decided to retire, and I want to be a certain point of my time that I don't work at all. That's the only reason I'm selling. By the way, Pasha is your new landlord. And what was really interesting to me was that he mentioned, like he had in quote unquote, he's the most likable person that I've seen in the last year. Now,
Wow.
I don't know if that's really accurate in describing me, but it was a big, and it's probably because COVID he hasn't seen anybody. But but what I would say is that it was really great for me because I mean when it comes to when I used to come to the transaction, I was more of a, all right, so what is your price? Like, no, let's go down, like more of like a yard sale type of situation.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, there's no way I'm going to pay you this now, that something like that, which was not, I mean, we basically negotiated on the price just like maybe just in 2 emails, and that was it. Like, hey, I think that's my price. And I was like, I really see your point and everything, but like based on where we are at and everything, like this is the price really that I can go for. And I understand if you can't go with it, that's absolutely fine. And he was like, well, how about a little bit more? And that's how we landed on 1.1, which is exactly what I wanted. Like I was going for one-on-one. And again, that was another technique that I learned, that like a good negotiator will make it in a way that the other person would never know what you wanted in the first place.
Wow.
But it was really like it basically enabled a lot of potentials in me, which is more building relationship. And it's not just with the seller now, it's more with contractors, with bankers. I've got 3 bankers that actually invite me to lunch on like monthly basis, just to keep in touch with me. And one of them was the one who actually funded this. One of the other a banker brought me a deal, which was crazy. They were like, hey, I know that like you're into these things. Like, what do you think about this one? Like my dad wants to sell this. Is it good? And it was actually a very good deal, and we were talking about it. But all I want to say is, instead of just being purely transactional and, you know, being a robot, because I, like, my friends used to call me like, you're a robot with just a skin. That's what you are. To a person that is like, hey, let's really talk. Let's see what you need. What are things that you're looking for? And uh, I would say that I pretty much learned all of that from this program. This program really was uh, helped me a lot. Not saying it for advertisement purposes or anything. For me, it was a perfect fit.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all that. And when I think back to, how you described yourself to me when we first met as being very analytical, right? It's what you do professionally. It's like computer science. I mean, it's science, right? And then here you have so quickly adapted yourself to like the art side of this too, which is the interpersonal side, the relationship side of things. Um, and to me, that's an amazing transformation. I mean, I was going to ask you, one of the questions I was going to ask you is, how have you changed personally, or what impacts have you seen personally throughout this experience too? You've kind of spoken to it, but if you have any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear that too.
That's a very good question. I would say, again, understanding the importance of relationship, um, importance of understanding the other person's criteria, the way that they look at everything, basically.
Yeah.
So just understanding what they need really, and sometimes they don't know what they need, and that's what you hear a lot in specifically marketing courses, is that your customer might not know what they need, and that's absolutely right. Like, it's on you to understand what they need. But when you do that, and then, like, imagine you help somebody to understand what they need, like, you immediately make rapport, you immediately make like a connection with them. um, and I really like that. So using that in my other relationships as well is pretty good, even with my friends. Actually makes me feel a little bit better. And I want to add another thing about, like, I would call it like the transformation that I had since, like, being just purely transactional. Now, I didn't lose the sight of like being analytical about the deal. Like, if a deal doesn't make sense, uh, I wouldn't go forward with it. But again, it's not like that I'm not going to make connection with that person. So there is like a couple of other people that reach out to me. I talk to them. I'm like, hey, look, like, this is where I can meet you at. And they're like, no, this is too low. And I was like, I absolutely understand, but I want to be in touch with you, not because I want to lowball you for over the period of time to buy these prices, but at these prices, but I really want to like be more um, um, cognizant of the fact that you're a landlord in my area, and I think there are a lot of things that we can help each other. And again, bam, you immediately like make a report. And it's really interesting to me that one of the agents that I used to work with, and I still actually work with him too, but he said, Pasha knows everybody in this market. And I look into it, and I'm like, holy crap, like he's not, I mean, I don't know everybody, but I've considerably increased my network. Like, I know people in the construction side, people in the syndication side, people on the education side of the real estate. And I wasn't like this. I was shy. I wasn't making any communication. So all of this actually happened all together, which was really helpful. But one of the main keys in this transformation was that it actually was kind of like not a step by step, but it, like, the nuggets of information was really well framed and was given to me. Because I mean, everybody has read like articles and papers and websites about like communication is important. I wasn't an exception to those either. I mean, I read that, oh, communication is important. Sure, yeah, like everything else, there are tons of other things that are important. But if you can teach me or show me, like, really, like, hey, if you're talking to someone and you get to this point, like, don't say anything. Let them go forward. There's going to be an awkward silence. And man, I used to be bothered by awkward silence so much that it wasn't even funny. Like, I would always just cut myself to just not get to that point.
Yeah.
But now I kind of see it as a tool in my backpack. Like, when I see like I'm getting to a point that I need them to decide, I just go to the silent mode, and there's like
Yeah.
5 seconds, 10 seconds. It's really uncomfortable, but I know that it's twice of that for the other person,
Yeah.
and then it works. So these are the things that, at least from my perspective, it was good for me to be well framed, well itemized, and be given to me, not just a hollow, big, vague discussion around, oh, communication is important type of thing, which was exactly the thing in Deal's program.
Yeah. Good, good. So what's next for you? What do you see as your next step? Do you think you'll continue to try to do this in the way that you just bought these 4 duplexes? What's next?
That's a very good question. So I'm tapping my toes a little bit into Airbnb, because I want to know, like, to some extent, how can I add better cash flow to my portfolio. We will know hopefully by mid-March. I'm still trying to come up with a better vision and mission for my company. Excuse me. But I would say I'm thinking, but again, I need to, that's the analytical part of it. I really need to make sure that I'm comfortable with that, where I'm headed toward. But I'm starting to head toward going to commercial residential buildings, basically the units that are more than 5. I think between 5 to 20 should be around the number that I would feel comfortable with.
Mhm.
And then basically start with those complexes going forward. But I still want to have my engine of duplexes and fourplexes is still making cash flow, is still being able to support the whole business. But I think I want to kind of scale it a little bit higher, because my goal's been get to 40 doors by the time that I'm 40 years old. And I've got about 4 more years to do that. And now we started last year, so we are up to 15 doors. But we would want to make sure that we don't over leverage ourselves, and everything, like we have like the worst case scenario type of thing, so that we don't lose everything. But at the same time, I do want to scale a little bit in the larger pace, if you will. So that's the plan, but that's written by the pencil on a draft mission. So hopefully we'll know more about that in the near future.
Beautiful. And as you look to try to buy some 5+ unit buildings, do you anticipate you'd use kind of a similar approach where you would try to work directly with the seller and use the relationships, strategies that you mentioned before?
Absolutely. So that's another thing that I'm thinking, because as you know, for the commercial buildings, usually broker has a lot of say in it. So it's more of making relationship, even with the brokers. Hey, if it's a commercial brokers, I do want to talk to them. And as a matter of fact, I have a lunch with a gentleman on Wednesday, and he's killing it. He's killing it in that area. And I was like, well, I want to be closer to him. I want to make relations with him. I want to learn from him. And that's exactly what I did. I picked up the phone. I called his company a couple of times, left messages, and he called me back, and then we started talking. And again, I think these skill sets were really good. It's really funny. Like my wife is like, this is one of those Jeff's teachings, right? I'm like, well, how did you? It's funny. At some point, I have a funny story about like our recent trip to Vegas too. I can bring that up later. But um, uh, I started talking to him, and instead of being too rigid, like real estate type of discussion, it was more of, hey, dude, like I'm seeing what you're doing. I really like it, and like, wow, what's up? Like, man, you're killing it. And immediately, like, we were like, oh yeah, sure. Like, I would love to. Like, do you want to come along and see some of my properties and what I'm doing? I don't mind sharing these things. And like something like that might catapult me like 2 years in experience right in front. Obviously, I will try to be helpful to him as much as I can. There's never going to be like a one-way street that's going to work for years, and I don't think that's going to be the case in here too. So I will try to be useful to him as well, but I don't think I would be able to do this without building a rapport, building a relationship.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really do think that I'm going to use all the skills that I know in that regard. And again, all the campaigns that I can run, either it's like a mail campaign, whether it's like even if it's a website, as long as you're in front of a person that you think is going to be some sort of value for your portfolio, either being a seller, either being like some sort of a big entity. After that, you need to make the relationship. And I think that's the key part, which is exactly the same for every, like, you want to do a storage unit, sure, you need to make connection with either the seller or the broker. You can't be like somebody behind the mask and just expect that everything will go through your way. No, that's not going to work. You need to make it. You want to work with a contractor. Well, if you are in good relationship with a contractor, I mean, I go to some of my contractors' church and they know that I'm not a very like religious person, but I go there to show support. And man, I can tell you, like, they are super, super amazing when it comes to working with on my projects. So I think all of this comes from the fact that you want to be successful, you want to make a relationship. So again, that's type of a capital, that type of a currency, if you will, that is helpful.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm so excited for you. I'm so proud of you. I think these 8 units, this package is awesome for what it is. But like, when I think about what that experience and all of that represents, like in the bigger picture of your life, and how you're transforming and how you're taking the principles behind that and applying them in completely different contexts and areas of life and stuff, that's probably where I'm most excited for you, because I can see you're taking those lessons but then extrapolating them in a million ways.
Thank you.
Super, super cool.
Thank you so much. It's all possible due to your help.
I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you, man.
Well, there you have it, my case study interview with Pasha. I sure hope you enjoyed listening to or watching that as much as I did originally, actually even originally when I was working with him during that set of deals. And when we did the interview in the first place, and then rewatching it again for this episode, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did and got some great takeaways and some lessons out of there about things you might encounter when working with sellers and deal structuring and financing and all of that. That's it for today's episode of Racking Up Rentals. So again, show notes can be found at thoughtfulre.com/E209. Please make sure you subscribed or followed this channel. But also, if you really want to do us a favor, like the most valuable 30-second favor you could do today would be to rate and review this show. If you think that we've earned 5 stars, that would be so amazing. I see every one of these. If you could just type out a sentence or two in an actual review, that would be so, so helpful. Thank you so much for doing that. I really do truly appreciate it. Did you know also that we have a Facebook group for us thoughtful real estate entrepreneurs? It's true. It's called Rental Portfolio Wealth Builders. We'd love to have you hang out and join us over there. You can just go to group.thoughtfulre.com, and the magic of the internet will take you right to that page within Facebook. So I will see you in the next episode next Thursday. Until then, this is Jeff from the Thoughtful Real Estate Entrepreneur signing off.